I'm going to call this meeting of the Champaign County Board together this evening. Come to order. Come to order. Mr. Quisenberry. Mr. Kurtz, have a seat. I'm going to ask that the clerk call the roll for purpose of establishing a quorum.
Petrie. Quisenberry.
Here.
Richards.
This line here,
Rosales. Here. Schrader.
Yes.
which is contradictory.
Alex.
Here.
Ammons. Anderson.
And it isn't needed.
Benzel.
And it's the first
Bergson.
time it's ever appeared.
Betts.
This is
Here.
Carter.
word for
Cowart. Esri.
Here.
Holderfield.
I'm going to move to just delete.
Here. Sorry.
James.
Here.
Jay.
Here.
Kibler.
Yes.
It either has to
Kurtz.
delete
Here.
or modify.
Langenheim.
Here.
Maxwell. Here. McGinty. Michaels.
Here.
Mitchell.
Here.
Mosier. O'Connor.
Here.
Weibel.
We do, in fact, have a quorum present. I'm going to ask Mr. Carter if he would lead us in prayer this evening. It's been a while. If you would.
Oh, Heavenly Father, this evening we're going to ask you, Heavenly Father, to bless us through the meeting, Heavenly Father. Bless our family, Heavenly Father. Bless our community and our country in which we live in, Heavenly Father. We need you. Just bless us and give us the mind and the strength to work together in harmony and peace. Amen.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would ask that the clerk read the notice of the meeting.
Notice is hereby given that a regular meeting of the County Board, Champaign County, Illinois, will convene on March 22nd, 2012, 7 o'clock p.m. in the Lyle Shields Meeting Room, Brookings Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street, Urbana, Illinois, in said county for the purpose of allowing and ordering payment of claims against the county, receiving and acting upon reports of committees, and such other matters as may be brought before said meeting, which said meeting shall continue in session from day to day until the completion of said business.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve the notice.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. James, is it seconded by Mr. Carter? Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carries. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda and any addenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Langenheim, seconded by Mr. Rosales. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carries. Date and time of the next regular meetings, Tuesday, April 3rd, 2012 at 6, the Committee of the Whole for County Facilities, Highway, Transportation, Environmental Land Use. Tuesday, April 10th, 2012 at 6 p.m., Committee of the Whole for Finance, Policy, Personnel and Appointments, and Justice and Social Services. And finally, Thursday, April 19th for the full County Board meeting at 7 o'clock. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at the consent agenda? Chair would entertain a motion to approve. Moved by Mr. Kurtz and seconded by Mr. Esri. Discussion. Clerk, call the roll.
Petrie.
Yes.
Quisenberry.
We've done that already.
Yes. Rosales. Yes. Schrader.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Ammons.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Benzel.
Yes.
Bergson.
Yes.
Betts.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Cowart.
Yes.
Esri.
Yes.
Holderfield.
Yes.
James.
Clear, yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Kibler.
Yes.
Kurtz.
Yes.
Langenheim.
Yes.
Maxwell.
Yes.
Michaels.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mosier.
Yes.
O'Connor.
Yes.
Motion carries. We now move to public participation. If I could ask Mr. Quisenberry, if possible, to keep track of time. Thank you, Mr. Quisenberry. Mr. Aaron Amons.
All right, good evening, everyone. First of all, I'd like to congratulate all the winners of County Board who were elected, duly elected last night. So what I want to address is the various different aspects of this county jail issue. One of the things that I'd like to share with the public who is watching and listening, as well as you county board members who may not know this, that the Attorney General codifies or sort of defines meetings in a broader term than what many of you may think. It's not just a meeting, a physical meeting. An email could be considered a meeting. A conference call could be considered a meeting. So I wanted to sort of open your minds and think about how this can be defined. That is the sort of context for me to share with you what I'm going to share with you now. So what you all have heard and the public has heard over and over again from Mr. Betts and Ms. Busey is that they don't meet. There are no minutes. Here are the minutes. 300 pages of emails and conversations dating all the way back to January and February of 2011. And we won't get into all the specifics of all of these, but there's quite a bit of meeting that's taken place. And so we just wanted you to know that and be absolutely clear about that, and the public to be absolutely clear about that. And the disregard and disrespect of the public participation is egregious throughout these emails. And I'm going to just read one sentence that is sent on February the 27th from Mr. Betts to Dan Walsh. And there's a lot more to this email, but I'm going to just share a snippet. Sheriff, I think that we, Deb, me, John Jay, and you, need to draft a 2- or 3-part guest piece for the News Gazette. Right now, I think the lunatic fringe is being allowed to define the debate, and the broader community is not receiving the issue. When Deb returns from her vacation, perhaps we can outline something. The public participation is being defined by the facilities chair, who is a part of this planning team. We're being defined as a lunatic fringe. And so I want you to know that this is how the public is being treated night after, just to share that the night after the elections. There's more later about how he thinks about the voters, but that'll come later. The other thing I want to address is that there was a motion made by my representative in District 5, Carol Ammons. I'm a constituent tonight at this particular moment. A motion to be a part of this planning team. It was voted on by this board, 12 to 11, and Mr. Betts had the deciding vote, 12 to 11, for a minority-influenced district to have representation on the planning team. So I'm wondering what's the holdup? Because it's clear that after that meeting, the very next morning, there was an email from the sheriff to Pius Weibel saying, hey, I think Lorraine Coward would be the person that you should put on that team, or that person. So Pius then turns and calls Ms. Coward and asks her if she would be on the team. So here's this behavior that's taking place. So the sheriff is dictating to the chair of the county board who should be appointed to a particular committee after you all have voted. And I believe Mr. Kurtz even said from the floor, Carol, are you asking that you be the representative? And she said yes. And he said, okay, well, then my vote is yes. So the clear understanding was that amongst the representation in the room and the people of color in the room was that Carol was going to be appointed to this committee. So we're just wondering what is the holdup. And it's clear that county business is being conducted the very next day. So we believe that she needs to be appointed tonight. to that planning team so that everyone can, so that she can be up to speed on what the meetings are really about. And the last thing is I'd like to say is that I still have not received a response from the county chair about the racist statements that were made by the state's attorney, who was also on this planning team. And I might add that she was undervoted by the black community in the Douglas Center area by more than 50%. Thank you very much.
Michelle Wander.
I should have brought my cheat sheet about the resolution number. I'd like to just speak in support of the Local Food Policy Council resolution. I don't think there's any doubt about the opportunity that this kind of conversation, the benefits that we could have in this community. I think that the appreciation of the importance of food and of the connections between the different entities in this community, going from the university, which I work at the University of Illinois, and I know there's a huge amount of interest in institutional buying and moving that connections from that entity to connect more to the community and local food production. So the proposal, I think, going out from some of those people who are residents in the community to people who are farming in the community or potential young farmers, that potential for expansion of growth and new business added to our already existing strength in agriculture is the kind of win-win solution that this kind of policy council could bring about. So.
Jacqueline Hanna.
Good evening. I'm here to speak in support of the adoption of Resolution 8069, establishment of the Champaign County.
Could you state your name and address?
I'm sorry. Jacqueline Hanna, 803 East Washington, Urbana. So I'm here to speak in support of Resolution 8069, the formation of a food policy council. As a good friend of mine always says, everyone eats. Food is not a niche issue. It is not a Democrat issue, nor is it a Republican issue. Food is front and center in the life of every person in this room tonight and every person in this county. It is an issue that affects every one of us. When looking at the health of our county and how to make it strong now and for the future, we can't leave food off the table. When looking at the county's economic development policy, I'm proud to see that my county government has not forgotten food's role in strengthening our county. I see that one of your economic development goals is to, quote, preserve the strength of agriculture and agritourism and the existing business base while diversifying the local economy. This is a terrific start. I can personally speak to the economic powerhouse food can be, especially local food, for our community. In just 3 years, I have watched the grocery store that I am general manager of, Common Ground Food Co-op in Urbana, increase its overall food sales by 280%. That's in 3 years. And its sales of food grown and produced within 100 miles of our front door increased by hundreds of thousands of dollars. I have watched this business and the demand for what it sells, local, healthy food, create 35 good jobs in those same 3 years at the co-op itself, and I have watched it create jobs on Champaign County farms at our stores due to our store's demand for local food. And I have watched new food businesses launch and find success in our county to also meet that demand. But as much as I already see great growth happening in demand for local food and on local farms, we need as a county to take our efforts to the next level. A movement to make food as central to our community's strength as it is to our daily lives is bigger than a few successful farmers markets, a couple of Champaign County farms that sell directly to our community, or a food co-op. We need a central force that has the respect to get all players to the table and the vision to craft a larger picture of what a successful food future would look like for our county. This is the role food policy councils are filling all over our nation. This is what I want to see happen in our county. We need farmers and retailers at the table, but we also need those who do the work of addressing food insecurity at this table. We need a table that brings together those looking at the impact of our county's policies with those who intimately understand the business of food. And we need a council that reaches out to the food policy bodies being formed all around us in areas like McLean County and Springfield to build synergies that will ensure a strong food future for the entire East Central Illinois region. What we need is a Champaign County Food Policy Council. I know times are hard and budgets are tight, but this council doesn't need the county's funds to make a real difference for our communities. It needs the county's support and the county's vision. Trust me, the passion to make this happen exists in our community. What our community needs is the county's leadership to bring us all to the table. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Diane Marlin.
Good evening. My name's Diane Marlin. I live at 2203 Boudreaux Circle, Urbana. I serve on the Urbana City Council. I'm here to support the creation of a Champaign County Local Food Policy Council. This advisory board could identify and enhance economic development opportunities related to the production, processing, distribution, and consumption of local and regionally produced foods. The council would be consistent with your written county economic development policies related to agriculture and business. The council could help us achieve many long-term goals that we share, such as producing better tasting and higher quality foods, strengthening the local food system, encouraging business and institutional purchases of local foods, improving accessibility and affordability of local foods, reducing transportation costs and energy consumption, promoting sustainable farming practices, increasing farmer income, improving food system security, addressing food insecurity issues, attracting young people to farming as a profession, and enhancing the genetic diversity and redundancy in our food supply. We'd make better progress toward all these goals with a more coordinated effort among stakeholders. The Local Food Policy Council could help by fostering collaboration, recommending policies, addressing barriers to further develop the local food system. And I urge you to support this proposal. And on a side note, like many of you, some of you anyway, I grew up on a family farm in the 50s and 60s in LaSalle County on a farm that my great-great-grandfather established. We raised cattle, hogs, chickens. We raised fruits and vegetables. And we ate some and sold some. We also grew corn and soybeans. Today, that same family farm produces corn and soybeans, but no food for direct human consumption. And that's the story of family farms pretty much throughout the state of Illinois and the Midwest. The creation of a food policy council is not a new idea, it's not a radical idea, it's simply a way for us to kind of reach back to the past, our not too distant past, but move forward toward the future in a way that can broaden the economy in Champaign County, as well as provide more options in our food supply. The food co-op in Urbana is a wonderful example of the kind of demand we have for local foods. The support we're getting from the state, such as this new publication from the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity related to food hubs and food aggregation facilities, is another example of the kind of resources available. So this advisory board, this Food Policy Council, isn't going to cost a lot of money. If anything, it's advisory in nature. But basically, as Jacqueline Hanna so eloquently stated just before me, this is an opportunity to pull together the people who need to be at the table talking about this and forming a vision of our future. And the key is this council needs to have the vision that we can get food for Illinois from Illinois. And as we do this, we also can broaden and strengthen our own economy here in the county. So I urge you I strongly urge you to create a food policy council. Thank you.
Kathy Capel.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Capel. I live at 1123 County Road 2300 East, Sydney, Illinois. I live on a small farm. I raise sheep and chickens and vegetables. I'm a relatively new farmer this will be my first summer selling at the farmer's market, and I'm really looking forward to it. As a small farmer in Champaign County, I welcome the possibility of a local food policy council. I believe it's essential that we form our own council that will bring everyone to the table that needs to be there. It's just reflecting what Diane and Jacqueline had to say. Our stakeholders are small farmers like me, more experienced larger farmers like Blue Moon Farms, Prairie Fruits Farms, local food retailers like Common Ground, and restaurants that are willing to provide local foods on their menus, and consumers who buy directly from farmers at the farmers markets and direct from the farm. I believe Champaign County and the farmers and consumers that make up the local food system need a forum for shaping policy that will benefit Champaign County through better markets, improved nutrition that's available to county residents, and it's an engine for local economic development. Thanks.
Rachel Phillips.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Rachel Phillips. I live at 304 West Eureka Street, Champaign, Illinois. I'm here to make a statement on behalf of Planners Network, which is the chapter of the University of Illinois. Planners Network is a community organization that stands for progressive urban planning through equity and social justice. It is understood that the Food Policy Council seeks to address economic issues, including diversification of local agricultural economy and promotion of existing and new businesses. While the economic goals of the food policy is very important, it must also include social justice goals, which we support. These include, first, connecting underserved areas with healthy food choices. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Champaign has 2 food deserts where 2,000 residents are more than a mile away from a grocery store. And the reality is that many of the members of our community are very limited to nutritious foods, making healthy choices very difficult. For example, the nearest full-service grocery store to the North Randolph Street community is 1.5 miles, which is over a 30-minute walk. Additionally, many underserved populations are transit dependent. Improved bus services and new services such as mobile food markets should be available that link residents to healthy food choices. This is one area the Food Policy Council could investigate and address. Second, organizing community gardens and farmers markets. The FPC can easily facilitate options that serve low-access neighborhoods by enabling organization of more community gardens and farmers markets. Community gardens and farmers markets provide an inexpensive way for people to grow and eat their own foods. Farmers markets also provide economic benefit by allowing local producers to earn money and consumers to benefit from access to nutritious foods. Together, they also create public urban spaces in which the community can come closer together. The American Community Garden Association also points to the benefits of neighborhood gardens beyond the greater availability of nutritious foods, such as crime reduction and resource preservation. Currently, Planners Network works with Motherland's Culture Club at the Randolph Street Community Garden, which brings together youth, senior citizens, and community members in a community space where food is grown, skills are shared, and friendships are forged. Third, linking existing community-wide resources. The proposed Food Policy Council can be designed to be a resource pivot in the Champaign food system, linking surplus food, knowledge, skills to the people who need them, thereby eliminating waste of fresh produce and optimizing the use of existing resources within our community. In conclusion, we ask that the Champaign County Board recognize the critical need for the establishment of a Food Policy Council in Champaign County that addresses the issues of access to nutritious and affordable food to our local residents. Thank you.
Steve Ayers.
I'm Steve Ayers, University of Illinois Extension Educator in Local Food Systems and Small Farms, and I serve in Champaign, Ford, Iroquois, and Vermilion counties. My Extension colleague, Zach Kennedy, is the Community and Economic Development Educator for the same area. Zach is on vacation this week, but asked me to share his thoughts on the Local Food Policy Council proposal. Zach feels the council could create synergies and coordinate the efforts of the various groups who are already engaged in the local food and food access projects. Having the council to coordinate projects could minimize the duplication of effort by various groups who may not otherwise be aware of other local food efforts. A Meet the Buyers workshop for fruit and vegetable farmers will be our next local foods event. And this comes up next Tuesday, March 27th at the Champaign County Farm Bureau at 801 North Country Fair Drive in Champaign. Program begins at 8:30 and presentations by the fresh produce buyers begin at 11 with buyers from Hendrick House, Schnucks, Feeding Illinois, Central Illinois Produce, Strawberry Fields, U of I Food Service, McCormick Food Service, and Common Ground Co-op. Farmers will also have an opportunity to meet privately with each of these buyers. Champaign County Farm Bureau, Illinois Farm Bureau, and U of I Extension are sponsors of this event. Later in the evening at 7 p.m., a Food Hub Summit will be held to explore opportunities for food hubs or packing sheds. Illinois Department of Commerce and Community Opportunity, Illinois USDA Rural Development, and U of I Business Innovation Services will host this summit. If you'd like to attend these sessions, contact the Farm Bureau at 352-5235. U of I Extension's role is to transfer the research-based information from the U of I to the Illinois citizens. Both Zach and I support the Local Foods Council and are willing to assist with the effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerome Bamberger. Sure.
Tonight, I'd like to give the public and the board a little insight into one instance where members of the Jail Space Improvement Project Planning team had privileged access to information they repeatedly withheld from the county board. Requests for facts and figures regarding what the jail project could cost and how we're going to fund it have been met with consistent evasiveness on the part of the team, something which would not and could not take place if the team were subject to proper oversight by the board. For instance, on January 31st, at the study session on the jail issue, Board Chair Pius Weibel asked the engineer hired by the project planning team to estimate the cost of the project. Not specifically, but just in general, top of the head sort of experience. Now, merely a week before the chair asked his question, County Administrator Deb Busey, who is on the planning team, wrote an email dated January 24th, 2012 to County Sheriff Dan Walsh, who is also on the planning team, in which she stated that I do have an unofficial cost estimate for this project, that the construction costs should be in the $22 million ballpark. Ms. Busey made absolutely no effort to provide this information to her employers when they requested it in a public forum. Patsy Petrie, Chris Alex, James Quisenberry, and Carol Ammons all commented on the apparent lack of even preliminary figures relating to the capacity of the county to pay for its proposed project. Tom Betts, another team member who was sitting at the front of the room that night, responded to their concerns by telling them that the county board can rarely come up with money for things. We don't have money right now for this project. Everyone knows it. This is why we're looking at it right now. Although it's not clear to me why Mr. Betts decided to give such a general answer, we know that the individual sitting to his left and right did have specific numbers. In fact, had had them for almost a year, and we know that they said nothing. I will arrive at these numbers in just a moment. First, I would like to read part of a question Board Member Geraldo Rosales asked at the next week's Facilities Committee meeting, as Deb Busey and Dan Walsh looked on. How did we determine that we would spend the amount of money that we are projected to spend? I mean, we really don't know exactly how much this is going to cost, but I'm just wondering, do we have the type of capital to build anew? Let's be clear here. Mr. Rosales was not asking for a precise figure that will be accurate in 6 months. He wanted to know whether there had been any thought given to how we were going to come up with the money that we have projected we might spend. On March 4th, 2011, Deb Busey sent the following to Sheriff Dan Walsh. My comment on construction project funding is the following. We anticipate a $15 million debt issue to pay for this project in 2013, with debt service to begin in 2014. We will have to structure the debt so that the first 3 years of payments are interest-only payments. We would then begin making full principal and interest payments in fiscal year 2017, which annual payments are projected at $1,055,417. Our long-term projections for the public safety sales tax support this level of funding for the jail replacement. Neither Ms. Busey nor Mr. Walsh made any indication they had an answer to exactly the question Mr. Rosales was asking. Instead, Mr. Betts told him that we don't have a figure for how much this is going to cost. We don't. That's one of the things we do need to find out about. Mr. Betts' response is particularly troubling because he is quoted in a News Gazette article from November 2011 saying that we might be able to get a $12 to $15 million facility with the quarter-cent sales tax money. I hope at this point that the board and the public are now asking, what other projections, facts, or plans have the planning team thus far declined to disclose? I would like to remind everyone that, as Mr. Betts is so fond of reminding us, the board is ultimately accountable for the actions of the project planning team. Given this, I urge that the board ensure the planning team's meetings and communications are open and transparent to the board and to the public by making the team's communications, as well as the minutes from their strategy meetings, available online. In addition, I propose that the board institute a monthly report back, including full disclosure of all relevant information by the planning team at facilities committee meetings. Thank you for your time.
Leslie Cooper-Bren.
Good evening. My name is Leslie Cooper-Band. I live at 4410 North Lincoln Avenue, and I am co-owner of Prairie Fruits Farm and Creamery with my husband, Wes Jarrell. Unlike the other times that I appear before you, I am actually here to talk about something very positive, the endorsement of the Local Food Policy Council. Our farm in particular would greatly benefit from a county-wide effort focused on building a local food system at the county and regional level. We have a farm on what is considered the peri-urban fringe, that is just on the outskirts of an urban area. We are very involved in producing and selling local food, but we also are neighbors with cash grain farmers. The need for a food policy council is that it would help to bring these disparate groups that are working on issues, either the food access issue or the economic development issue, but not in a concerted effort. And that is the major role of a food policy council. It would be an advisory role. It would not cost, from my understanding, is that it would not cost the county any money. This would be, the members would serve on a voluntary basis. I know of other regions in the state and in the Midwest who have formed food policy councils, and that has resulted in their ability to either acquire grant funds or loans to further the programs that they're advocating for. One of the issues I think that a number of you are concerned about is that a food council would dictate to farmers what they should or shouldn't do. It is not the role of a council to tell farmers what they should do. It is just to provide sound information from which people can make decisions. The other issue that I think some folks believe is that it's either cash grain agriculture or local food agriculture, and I'm here to tell you that where we have our farm, we coexist side by side with cash grain agriculture, and we work in harmony, and that it is not an either-or situation. In fact, in many cases, there can be synergies built between cash grain farmers and local food farmers. For example, we have talked with our cash grain neighbors about raising certain types of grain that we can feed to our livestock. Some of them may consider putting hay back into our rotation if we were interested in buying their hay. So it is not a confrontational or a competitive relationship between local food farmers and cash grain farmers. And I hope that you will consider supporting this Food Policy Council, because I believe that on so many levels it will further both the agricultural heritage of this region, as well as foster a greater and more profound economic development for the region. Thank you.
Thank you. Public participation is closed. Communications from the board. Ms. Ammons.
I just want to announce on behalf of Mr. Carter and Ms. Cord and myself that we'll have a constituency meeting for District 5, still District 5 until December. District 5 at Salem Baptist Church on March 27th at 6 p.m. That's 500 East Park Street in Champaign at 6 p.m. at Salem Baptist Church on March 27th. Everybody's welcome to come. Of course, we'll notice that anyway, which is why I'm doing this in the first place.
Further communications, Ms. Anderson.
The Mental Health Board met yesterday, and at the end of our meeting, we had a study session to bring us up to date on the court diversion services within the county. And it was a PowerPoint presentation, and I brought some extra copies. They look like this. They're over on that corner. Alternatives have come up at public participation before. This may not answer everything about the services, but they have been under RPC for the last, I think, 8 years. And I think when they largely started, it was working more with station adjustments from Champaign police departments, which is where the referrals come from for station adjustments. But it was interesting for me to find out that for the last 3 years now, we have all of the police departments within the county making referrals on. So people who are interested are welcome to pick one of those up. And there is more information on their website, and it mentions the peer court, and we saw a video, and it doesn't talk about that in here, but that's also available on the RPC website, which is an interesting program that started just a few years ago here.
Thank you. Any further communications from members of the board? Seeing no further communications, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of February 23rd, 2012. Moved by Geraldo Rosales, seconded by Mr. Mitchell. Discussion, additions or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carries. Areas of responsibility, policy, personnel, and appointments. Ms. Ammons.
Policy moves adoption of resolution number 8069, establishing the Champaign County Local Foods Policy Council. I so move.
Seconded by Mr. Kurtz. Discussion. Mr. Mosier, then Ms. Petrie.
I'd like for Mr. Ayers to explain a couple things to me. You talk about food. What's the market for organic against what we call common food, I guess, and vegetables and fruit, and how that designation's gotten from the state that something is certified as organic?
Mr. Chair, I move suspension of the rules for Mr. Steve Ayers to answer that question.
He's not here right now.
So I withdraw that motion.
Unless you can make him magically appear, I'm going to rule the motion out of order. Do you have further questions, Mr. Mosier?
Well, I see in this thing that Ms. Petrie has prepared that NACO's supporting changes in the, I guess it'll be the 2013 Farm Bill to bring vegetables and some other things into what we call welfare checks where I farm from the government to facilitate I guess, advancement of the local foods industry, and I just find that difficult to think that's going to happen when we're looking at pretty much diminishing all of the subsidies that farmers have been getting in the way of direct payments for the last, I guess, 2 farm bills, John. I go back farther than that, but as far as you're getting any help from the federal government, this thing is a nightmare to deal with right now, and you're talking about corn and soybeans and wheat and every other cash crop that they're trying to subsidize. Cotton, the list is long, and it's when you spend half your life in the FSA office trying to comply with all these regulations and all the information they require, is just not going to happen. I spent my winter in Apollo Beach, Florida, south part of Hillsborough County, right south of Tampa. And they have a flea market down there 4 days a week where local people bring in produce, strawberries, tomatoes, sweet corn, squash, pineapples. And it's an interesting thing to visit because you can save a lot of money by going down there and dealing with those people on a one-on-one basis. And if we had something like that here, I think I could support this, but I don't want to go where we've gone with this board for a lot of times. When we create something like this, in the end, we've created something we're going to spend money on. And when land's $10,000 an acre in this county, and there is no labor available, these are labor-intensive operations when you get into anything very big with it, where that's going to come from. And this is a seasonal area. I don't know. You can function 6 months out of the year and then the farmer's market's gone. But I think you need to understand that it is labor intensive. And when you convert cash grain land to this type of an operation, you've got to change all your equipment, you've got to change your labor, and you're going to have to deal with some things that we don't deal with now in a farming operation where we don't have a lot of hired help. And I can go back where Mrs. Marlin, I grew up on a farm. It's been in my family for 5 generations, and I can remember the cows and the pigs and the garden and the chickens. But that was a family thing. And when you look at the average age of a farmer in this county now being something over 62 years old, it's real difficult to entice somebody like me that's probably 2 years from getting out of the business to try to get into it. It takes a lot of money, and you don't know what the return's going to be on your investment. It's a risky situation if you try to move toward a big enough operation where I think it'd be profitable. I'm going to vote no on this. I appreciate what I see in Florida. I take advantage of it every month we're down there, and it's wonderful food. I don't know if it's organic or whether it's corrupted with fertilizer, but it's good, and I think these things need to be brought out and considered.
Patsy.
Thank you very much. First, I want to bring to my colleagues' attention specifically the letter from Warren Ribley, who is the director of the Department of Commerce and Community Opportunity. And his letter to the county board is in full support of the county establishing a food policy council, because this goes directly along with what DCEO is trying to establish throughout the state in relationship to economic development, and it also parallels with our own county economic development policy that we have up on our website. I do not presume to speak for people who are here for public participation, so my apologies to them, but they can't come back and answer some of the issues that Mr. Mosier just raised. We had Leslie Cooperban of Prairie Fruits Farm speak. We had Michelle Wander and her husband John is here. They have Blue Moon Farms. And both of these are very, very successful small farms. As Leslie mentioned, this isn't a competition with the row crops. They farm on such small acreage, and actually the return per acre is far greater than the return per acre on the row crops. I believe Leslie mentioned there's a synergy between both types of farming, and that it's not something that should be excluded in our county, and something that we should consider as a great means of economic development for our county. This is something we need. This is very low cost in the way of infrastructure to be supportive of agriculture and farming in our county. And as the resolution is set up, there is absolutely no cost to the county for this advisory council to start shaping what could be happening in our county and what is happening in counties, in other counties throughout our state. So I would appreciate support for passage of this resolution.
Mr. Esri, followed by Mr. Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, a couple things. Ms. Petrie just mentioned there's absolutely no cost. That's not true in the way I read the resolution. It says we provide a website on the county website. I'm sorry, it may be minimal, but that is a cost. So there is a cost already with this, and I would happen to agree with Mr. Mosier that I can see this growing to where it would cost this board even more. Second point I guess I'd like to make, this isn't a county where there's a lot of land left out there to be farmed that isn't already being farmed. The small farmers, yes, they coexist fine with the big farmers as far as I know. About the only problem I know of probably is chemical drift, which big farmers, if they're doing their job right, cash crop farmers I should say, not necessarily big farmers, they try to control that because they don't want issues with their neighbors. And that's about the only thing I can see that maybe would be an issue between the two sizes. It sounds to me like the things that are happening in this county things are progressing the way they should progress. People are talking to their cash crop neighbors about growing hay, and some of them are acceptable to that. That sounds like everything's going great, the demand is growing, the production is growing. Mr. Ayers mentioned duplication. To me, it sounds like creating this would be the duplication. And I've said it before, it sounds to me like this is more government, more government, more government, more government. Now maybe it's only advisory at this point in time, maybe it always stays advisory, but it's still more government. And along those lines, I can't support this. I'm sorry. I like fresh food. I totally agree with Mr. Mosier. I like having fresh food and everything. I mean, but I would love to have my own garden. I personally don't have the time. I've got the space, but I don't have the time. But I would have to say I can't support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Richards?
Guess I'm gonna have to disagree with Mr. Esri on this. I think that this is a revenue neutral way for us to boost a local industry. There's a reason the Department of Commerce and Economic Development is pushing these around the state. And this could be particularly advantageous here in Champaign, both because we have some of the richest farmland in the world, literally, and unlike a lot of counties in this prairie belt here in central Illinois, we have a local market and a local will to work with local farmers who want to do these kind of crops and boost this here. And so I think that we should support this because I think that this is something we can nurture here in Champaign County. and that this is something that is going to add to our economy and add to our culture here in Champaign County the next few years. And so this is revenue neutral. This is basically a way to bring people together and put our stamp on this and say, yes, this is important. And I do think that, yes, this is important. So I think that we should do this.
Mr. Kibler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would concur that this policy council has really good intentions, and I would also concur that everybody on this board has a strong desire to see our agricultural system in Champaign County grow and become even better year over year. But this resolution just further expands this board, further expands our government in this county. This council would be best placed really under the extension or under the guise of a more proper entity that has much better influence than we would. And I think it's been brought up by Mr. Esri as well. This is another round of duplication. And because of that fact, well, I believe it's a good starting point. It just doesn't belong here. And for that reason, I think I need to vote no, barring any other major reasons why.
Any further discussion? Mr. Quisenberry.
Yeah, I'm going to support this resolution. Champaign County, surprisingly enough, is one of the most food insecure counties in the state of Illinois. I find that very surprising with the amount of food that we produce here. And I think a local food council can be a step towards addressing that. In the interest of full disclosure, I'm a member of St. Matthew Lutheran Church on Philo Road, who is launching Sola Gratia CSA as a means to produce more local food to support the Eastern Illinois Food Bank. And the reason why the church is doing that is because there's a need. I also work at the University of Illinois, and I know that there's a very strong demand on the part of the students to see more local food available for their meals. And there's a sustainable student farm, all of whose produce is now going to support food in the dining halls. Nobody else can step in and buy that food because there's not enough of it. So there's a demand here that needs to be met. We're in a good position to help coordinate that by creating this council, and I see it as a need and a thing to do. If you take a look at what Sola Gratia is doing, it's taking 3.5, 4 acres that was up until recently farmed for beans or corn and sold as a donation, which would raise about $2,000, $2,500. As a CSA, it's selling 62.5 shares at $500 a piece. Now, I call that economic development, and it's going to be giving produce to the Eastern Illinois Food Bank. I think it's an area that we can do better.
Mr. Langenheim, then Mr. Kurtz.
Microphone. There is a concern here. Microphone, please. Oh, yes. I don't believe in microphones. Can't hear it. There is an argument being made here that this is going to open the door towards expenditure. The only way that there ought to be any county expenditure on this is if this body, in its wisdom, votes as a majority to levy it, to spend money on it. And that's not being proposed. What's being proposed appears to be utterly reasonable, and I plan to support it. And I'm also calling for a roll call vote.
There'll be a roll call. Mr. Kurtz.
Thank you. Anything that expands local food production is a positive. Everybody's been talking about revenue neutral, revenue negative. I tell you, this is revenue positive. The more we expand local foods, the more our local grocery stores use it, the more money this county makes. It becomes a growth of economic development. Everybody thinks economic development is these buildings or car dealerships, or no, but it's agriculture as well here in our Champaign County. And I think if we can expand like Prairie Food Farms have, and now are a nationwide operation that are expanding our excuse me, our county's reputation across the country for local foods, I think this is a positive, and I will fully support this council.
Mayor Lamons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Of course, I will support the resolution, but the important part is if the resolution asks for money, I would support it. Why? We should not think that it's important that our nectarines travel all the way from Chile to get to Urbana for us to have what would be considered somewhat fresh produce. I encourage urban gardens. My husband grows. We try to teach children in the community to do that because this is not just a food or eating issue, it is a health issue. And I would encourage the new board, when the new board takes place, to really reshape and redirect its priorities so that we can start looking at things like local food council, obesity clinics in our county. We have other issues that are happening that are impacting the daily lives of people that seem to get overlooked by the county board. And so this is just one step. If they were asking for money, certainly I would support it. But in this case, a website is not too much to ask to put up that Champaign County is in support of creating any avenue to control local food and control local food production. So I would support that 100%.
Any further discussion? Mr. Alex and then Ms. Holderfield.
I guess I'd also encourage my fellow board members to support this. I mean, I think we've heard, and I respect these comments about, the last thing we need is another government program. But I think we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I mean, there might be a better place for this organization, but I mean, we've had a representative from the extension here saying he thinks this is a good idea and that it would actually help reduce duplication among services provided by local agencies by just getting them together and talking. Yeah, maybe it's going to cost us a couple bucks to maintain the website if you count the electricity it takes to run the computers or something, but we're not talking about something that's a significant expenditure here. We're talking about something I think has considerable opportunity to lead to economic development. I mean, it's rare that we see the kind of direct evidence that we've seen Ms. Hannah present tonight with regard to specific job creation in this industry. It's clearly an area that other counties are interested in, that the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity accepts as a potential economic growth area, and I think it's something we need to support.
Thank you. Ms. Holderfield.
I will admit that I've had some mixed emotions about whether or not I will support this food council. In listening to many of the public participation speakers, and also I am a common ground shopper. I love fresh foods. And I think we have to remember that the more development that we have, the smaller the yard space is. And there's also a lot of preventative measures that have taken place in our newly developed subdivisions that do not allow gardening. And in order for children to learn and grow about gardening, I think that a local food co-op would be an outstanding opportunity for kids to learn how to grow their own local foods. And if it does expand and there is farm ground that is made available so that it actually opens up a large community gardening center, I would absolutely love that. And also, the more local growers that we have, it does lower the cost of the organic grower cost to them. You can reduce the price of the locally grown foods by being able to produce more and making it more abundant and available to our community. I understand the larger farmer, their concerns. I don't like to expand government any more than in any of my other fellow Republicans that are in this room this evening. But we have to remember that it does give the opportunity to grow our local economy. And I see this as an opportunity to do that. So I want to, make sure that everybody clearly understands that it's small businesses that continue to be the train that drives our economy, and it gives the opportunity for our small businesses to thrive and survive. So I will be supporting this resolution.
Yes, Mr. James.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, and by all means, I love to eat, whether it's fresh fruit or old fruit. But I have yet to ever see anything that a government entity starts that doesn't become a boondoggle. Just look at nationally our Department of Energy and what have you, and what Carol said a minute ago hit home with me. There's a lot of programs that need a lot of attention, but I would much rather see something like this when I heard Quisenberry talk up front. a church group come together where you don't have politicians that are going to put their stamp on it, get involved in it, and if it does get to the point where it needs funding, that we're all paying for something that we're really getting no use out of. There's a lot of things in this world that individuals and groups can do a lot better than a government entity, and so much is being asked of government all the time, then people turn around and complain about what government is doing, whether it be on an advisory committee or what have you. I think sometimes the citizens that really have an interest and a need in this stuff need to get together with other groups and form that coalition and move that coalition without depending on a bunch of bureaucrats putting their stamp on it.
Any other questions before I call the roll? Mr. Jay.
Well, I, like Stan, wasn't going to say anything, but I felt the need. They started out saying that there wouldn't be no cost, and I'm cost conscious. As you all can look at me, and I like food, and I take my fair share, so I'm not trying to belittle the food program. I think the success that some of our folks have already had indicate that nothing breeds success better than success, and the way to stop success is to put government in its way. And I think that's exactly what we're doing tonight in this particular incident, is putting government in a way that something is really turning out to be pretty successful. But when we talked about costs, I was jotting down as the speakers were speaking, it started at no cost, absolutely wouldn't cost us nothing, to, well, maybe there would be a need for a little bit of seed money, or maybe a little bit of money, or maybe some grants. Nobody's talked about how we're going to disseminate whatever this council is going to do. It's going to take an effort. I do believe in volunteerism. I've done it the biggest part of my life. But volunteer is different than being paid or paying somebody to do it. I just don't think that that's necessary. I think this county has a lot on its plate. I think this is a wonderful program, but let's not make this a feel-good thing. Let's do it because it's the right thing to do if we do it.
Mr. Schrader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try and be brief. I've made comments in the past during the committee of the whole, so I'll just refrain from going on and just agree with some of the comments I heard from my colleagues, in particular what Mr. James said about things. I'm not opposed to a food council. I just think we're trying to reinvent the wheel here. I think we've heard from Steve Ayers. We've heard that extension goes along with this, but I think if this board wouldn't do it, I think extension would have set up a food policy council. I disagree from where this thing's being set up from. I think you're politicizing something here that shouldn't be politicized. I think you've got Farm Bureau on board now. You've got Illinois Farm Bureau on board now. They're really in charge of promoting this. They're working hand in hand with extension. I think this thing could really grow. And I'm speaking from someone who's diversified my operation in the past. I used to be a small hog farmer. I've done things. I grow wheat. I've got 145 acres of wheat in this county. I'm the largest wheat producer in this county. I've grown cowpeas before. There was a year where they came in here, cowpeas is a winter annual. The thing is like Frank DeNova used to say, as a county zoning administrator, this is 36 square miles of hydraulic soils. These soils they're not forgiving for a lot of things. They're great for growing grass, tall grass, any kind of grass, corn, wheat, but some things it's very unforgiving for growing. I can tell you that when I put my cowpeas in, I didn't expect powdery mildew to hit them, and it did. It's a soil-borne fungicide, and it's out there. And it doesn't hit all the time, but the right conditions with heat and moisture, it hits. This is a climate with our soils we have in this county. If they're not drained and not drained well, you're going to get hit with all sorts of things. And south of me, for years, Clyce Produce tried for years to develop large acres of produce. They were somewhat successful, but it was very labor intensive. The soils were unforgiving, and they ended up suing a couple of the co-ops for spray drift. So I'm not trying to say that we couldn't be good neighbors with small farmers. That's not the point. Point is there's some things that grow better in sandy soils that don't grow very well in these tight, silty, low clays. So I'm not opposed to the Food Council. I just think that the extension could have handled it. It would have taken the politics out of it, because I think, Mr. Chair, if I called you and said, well, I do, my peas are dying of powdery mildew, what would you tell me to do with them?
I grew up in Los Angeles. I have no idea.
So I think you have to have extension and University of Illinois crop specialists over there to help. And that's why I think that's where it should come from, not from this political body.
Thank you, Mr. Schrader. Anyone that has not had a chance to speak, which is Jan Anderson.
I hadn't intended to say anything because that seemed to me this would be a go, but hearing from all of the people that are supporting, I didn't take it as government interfering with what they're doing. It seems like they are asking for a way to get together. We've seen this in other areas of the county not involving food, even with like the mental health services and so forth. Over the years, you know, there was a time they sort of knew each other existed, but they didn't know what they were doing. There's a lot more cooperation there, and I think the community has benefited from that. And I think that same thing can be applied to this Food Council. It's a way of giving them a way of sharing ideas and making plans that they not come back to us to carry out, but that, you know, to enable them and give some attention to them. And I grew up in Pennsylvania and came here, you know, like the early 60s, and grew up in a mountainous area where you had a lot of farm produce available, and it still exists today. You don't have to go to Florida to see large farm markets. The state is producing it there, and it's taken a number of years, but it was just great then to see the things like Common Ground and the food market at Urbana, which is each year seems to grow and grow and grow, and the demand is there, and it seems to be a part of thinking about economic development. And if we can call attention to that, I definitely would vote for it.
Anyone who has not had an opportunity to speak on this issue that would like to speak before I go to people who have already spoken? Seeing no hands, I'm going round two. Ms. Holderfield.
Thank you. I understood this evening that the extension is also supporting this resolution, this food policy. Does anyone recall that? Yes? Okay. All right. And for me, that was probably the reason why I was not going to support it, but knowing now that they are in support of it, and I do want to support the extension. So, you know, I understand not having another committee that the county board is overseeing. I do have a question, and hopefully somebody can answer that. As far as cost is concerned, what do we really, truly see if this is, we're sunsetting this in 2 years, I believe. Is that true? Are we sunsetting this in 2 years? Okay. So as far as any type of a cost is concerned other than a county website, can anybody address the cost that will be incurred to the taxpayers of Champaign County because this Food Policy Council is being formed?
The sponsor of the resolution, Ms. Patsy Petrie, I am going to take out of order because I think she wants to answer that question. And no, I'm going to have you answer it while it's still alive.
The way the resolution is written and the intent of the resolution is that this is purely an advisory council, and if the members who get appointed by Chair Weibel to this advisory council have the wherewithal to write grants and get themselves some grant money to do some things that is not taxpayer money. The intent was never for taxpayer money, and the small amount that has been discussed that they might have the posting of their their meetings and the minutes up on the county website, I cannot imagine that being a huge expense. So that's the way it's written, and that's the intent behind it.
Thank you for clarifying that. Mr. Esri, then Mr. Kurtz, and then Ms. Michaels.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick comment, and I'll preface this by saying, no, I am not Steve Ayers. This is my thoughts on it. But if I were Steve Ayers, I would be in favor of this too. You're talking about my job. I'm for it. My job is this. It goes right along with my job. This is what I do day to day. I mean, I know it. I guess that's why, yeah, I would be for it. So the fact that Extension is for it, I think they would pick it up and run with it if we didn't, as Mr. Schroeder said here, if we don't do this, I think it will get done. So again, I am not Mr. Ayers, I'm not Extension, but if I were, my mindset, yes, I would be for it. Thank you.
Mr. Kurtz.
I think we've had a really good discussion. I'd like to call the question and a roll call. Seconded to Mr. Langenheim, please.
I want to make sure of something before we do this, because there was one person who had their hand up who didn't get an opportunity to speak, and Ms. Michaels.
I apologize, sir. That's exactly what I was going to.
That being said, I will recognize the call. All those in favor of calling the question signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carries. There will be a roll call vote on the motion. If you, the clerk could call the roll.
Petrie. Quisenberry.
Yes.
Richards.
Yes.
Rosales.
Yes.
Schrader.
Nope.
Alex.
Yes.
Ammons.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Benzel.
No.
Bergson.
Yes.
Betts.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Cowart.
Yes.
Esri.
No.
Holderfield.
Yes.
James.
No.
Jay.
No.
Kibler.
No.
Kurtz.
Yes.
Langenheim.
Yes.
Maxwell.
Yes.
Michaels.
Yes.
Mitchell.
No.
Mosier.
No.
O'Connor.
No.
Motion carries. Ms. Ammons.
Policy moves adoption of resolution number 8070, approving award of contract for purchase of prisoner transport bus for the Champaign County Sheriff. We so move.
Second.
I'm going to say Mr. Quisenberry, I heard him. Discussion. Yes, Mr. O'Connor.
Is this an addition to the fleet or a trade-in of the old one, or how's this all?
They're replacing a bus that has been scheduled to be replaced for the last 3 years.
Further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carries. We go to Finance, Mr. Geraldo Rosales.
Finance, I move to adopt resolution number 8037, budget transfer 12-2 from Project Access Initiative Grant through the Mental Health Board in the amount of $237,746 to reduce the original personnel budget. Staffing changes were made after December 1st to allow the staff to work out of contracting agencies.
Second.
That was seconded by Mr. Schrader. Discussion. Ms. Petrie.
I see Mr. Tracy is in the room, and I just want to thank him for the time he met with me, and also the documentation that's provided in our packet for this evening gives us a much better understanding of both items 1 and 2. So thank you very much for that, and Ms. Busey.
Further discussion. I think we have to have a roll call. If the clerk would call the roll.
Petrie.
Yes.
Quisenberry.
Yes.
Richards.
Yes.
Rosales.
Yes.
Schrader.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Ammons.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Benzel.
Yes.
Bergson.
Yes.
Betts.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Cowart.
Yes.
Esri.
Yes.
Holderfield.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Kibler.
Yes.
Kurtz.
Yes.
Langenheim. Maxwell.
Yes.
Michaels.
She's out.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mosier.
Yes.
O'Connor.
Yes. I'm back.
Motion carries.
Langenheim.
Yes.
Item number 2, adoption of resolution number 8071, budget amendment 12-13 from the Access Initiative Grant through the Mental Health Board. Increase appropriations to $500,000. Also increase revenues to $66,694. There is $433,306 in grant revenue received in fiscal year 2010 and 2011, which is now being appropriated for program expenditures in fiscal year 2012. In addition, $66,694 of grant revenues will be received in fiscal year 2012.
Seconded by Mr. Kurtz. Discussion. If seeing no discussion, if the clerk would call the roll.
Petrie.
Yes.
Quisenberry.
Yes.
Richards.
Yes.
Rosales. Yes. Schrader.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Ammons.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Benzel.
Yes.
Bergson.
Yes.
Betts.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Coert.
Yes.
Esri.
Yes.
Holderfield.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Kibler.
Yes.
Kurtz.
Yes.
Langenheim.
Yes.
Maxwell.
Yes.
Michaels.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mosier.
Yes.
O'Connor.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item number 3, adoption of resolution number 8072, authorizing a loan to the General Corporate Fund from the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund.
Is there seconded by Mr. James? Discussion? Yes, Ms. Petrie.
So discussion, I just wanted to publicly thank Ms. Busey for responding to my questions on the use of the public safety monies as sort of a bridge until the property tax monies come in.
Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Item number 4, adoption of resolution number 8073 for payment of claims authorization.
Seconded by Mr. Carter. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Item number 5, adoption of resolution number 8074 for the purchases not following the purchasing policy.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Alex. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same.
Aye.
Motion carries nonetheless. Now to the Veterans Assistance Commission Committee. Ms. Coer, before okay. Veterans Assistance Commission Committee, Mr. Langenheim.
Yes. I move adoption of resolution number 8076 in recognition of the establishment of the Champaign County Veterans.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. James. Discussion.
I wish to amend that. I wish to strike the statement, a statement from Article 10, page
33.
30 to page 30 from Section 6, which reads, "The office shall be under the direction of the superintendent further designated as superintendent of Veterans Assistance Commission of Champaign County, who shall investigate and report to the proper county or governmental agency all claims for assistance under the law." Comma. I wish to delete the words following the comma, and his her decision shall be final unless in accordance with proper appeal procedures. Two objections to that, if I may continue. One is that it's contradictory. The decision should be final unless it's in accordance with proper procedures, then it's not be final. And secondly, that's not needed is that this particular phrase has appeared in this version of the resolution. It is not present in any previous version. It's not present in model versions that was presented. And I've talked this over with the members of our committee and with a member of the Veterans Commission, and we're all in favor of deleting that phrase.
Can I ask the committee if we could have unanimous consent to agree on deleting that phrase?
Yes.
I got a point of order.
Okay.
That's done by me personally. It's not been done.
Go ahead, Mr. James.
Since these aren't our bylaws, we didn't draft them, should we not make a motion to send it back to the Veterans Committee?
They're subject to your approval.
Subject to our approval, okay.
Do I have unanimous consent to allow the deletion of "and his/her decision shall be final unless in accordance with proper appeal procedures"? Seeing no objection, that is deleted. Now to the main motion. Any discussion on the main motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same.
Aye.
Motion carries. Under B, is Joel here? We do have a closed session coming up. Last month, people requested that we obtain an opinion regarding the Open Meetings Act in relationship to the jail issue. Yes, and we did obtain an opinion for the county board, and that is just for information this evening while we await Mr. Fletcher. The other thing I will tell you is Mr. John Jay will be chairing the rest of the meeting tonight. Because I do know what the particular issue is in the closed session, I have a relationship that is not adverse to the county, but adverse to one of the other individuals involved in this matter, and to avoid any possibility of a perceived error or impropriety or any possibility that the county could get wrangled into a lawsuit, I am going to step aside on this issue and ask Mr. Jay to come forward and conduct the rest of the meeting, including after you go out of executive session, to adjourn the meeting. Yes, Ms. Petrie.
Before we get Mr. Jay chairing the meeting, I have an information question. Now that the resolution has been approved for the advisory council proceed. Dates in mind. Do I just consult?
I would assume.
I think you need to talk with Chair Weibel. He'll be back on Monday. We'll need to probably do a press release like we did for the Community Justice Task Force, appointments, criteria, get the appointments going process.
Right. Thank you very much.
You need the motion to go into closed session.
I'm going to have him do it. Okay.
Do we have a motion somewhere?
Mr. Benson.
Thank you for joining us, Mr. Jay. Sure. Good luck.
Is Jay from L.A.?
All the best.
Mr. Benson.
Don't we have to vote on a closed session?
Mr. Benson's going to be.
I was waiting on Mr. Jay to get to the chair.
Mr. Bensel?
I move that we enter into executive session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C11 to consider litigation which is probable or imminent against Champaign County.
Second.
I further move that the following individuals remain present: county's legal counsel, county's administrator, recording secretary.
Seconded by Esri. All right, we're in closed session. Roll call. I'm sorry.
Can I ask for a friendly amendment?
Yeah.
That John Hall, our zoning administrator, be allowed to stay?
Friendly amendment?
Yes.
Yeah. Petrie?
Yes.
Thanks. Quisenberry?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Rosales?
Yes.
Schrader.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Ammons. Anderson.
Yes.
Benzel.
Yes.
Bergson.
Yes.
Betts. Carter. Coert. Esri.
Yes.
Holderfield. James.
No.
Jay.
Yes.
Kibler.
Yes.
Kurtz.
Yes.
Langenheim.
Yes.
Maxwell.
Yes.
Michaels.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mosier. O'Connor.
No.
We are now.